Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Everybody feeling all right? I'm not feeling too good myself. No, that's the lyric, sorry. Thank you, I'm going to go kind of quickly through this because I do want to keep on time. I'm not exactly noted for doing that. What I'd like everybody to do while we're going through the preliminaries, go ahead and taste the wines. Don't drink it all. Don't just, I know some of you just, it's more like Bombay and, and all I want you to do is pay attention to flavors and try, if you could, for a second, to taste each wine and imagine somebody in your life or a friend, in addition to yourself, that might like the wine even if you don't like it, okay? So this isn't a technical tasting of the wines. We're going to be exploring some other elements of wine and food, right? All right, and celebrating Sauvignon Blanc. Who loves Sauvignon Blanc? Yay. Who thinks Sauvignon Blanc sucks? Would you like to express your dislike of color? All right, so just real quickly, I'm really old, and this is 53 years since I started studying wine and gastronomy, so it's a long time. My interest in wine started in 1966. I decided very early that I wanted to do this as a career, and when I dropped out of college, it was to go to work in restaurants and start my very classical culinary training, and I need to reinforce very classical, okay? So my apprenticeship was in pastries. I was reading classic French text, and that was my background. And so that's my passion for the gastronomy, the traditions of the table, the culture, and the French cuisine, all right? Fast forward many years, I moved out to California in 1988 and joined the Behringer organization. It was just at the time when the Institute of Masters of Wine was accepting international candidates. And at that time, Michael Hill Smith was the only non-resident UK resident that had actually passed the Master of Wine examination. And in 1989, I sat the examination and was quite literally one of the most epic fails in the history of the Institute. David Stevens, then chairman of the Institute, for years introduced me, and we'd like to present Mr. Tim Hanni, one of the two Americans to first pass the examination. And when he first sat the examination, he did so poorly, I had pen and paper in hand, trying to politely say, Mr. Hanni, stay away for a very long time. True story. All right. So, I thought that after having done the examination, there was no study course, there was no basis in the US. I never saw an examination question or had any clue how the blind tasting was conducted till I sat down in 1989 for the exam. So I went back to the US. I had my administrative assistant do some research on writing courses and organizing thoughts. And she gave me a list of programs. I signed up for one and showed up for my 3-day writing class, Clear Communications. And I was at the wrong place on the wrong day. And I go to register, and it was Disruptive Innovation and Critical Thinking for Electrical Engineers. I said, well, what about this one? They said, that was last week in San Jose, you moron. So I said, oh shit, okay. So I stayed, and it literally changed my life. It literally changed my life. You shut up. Some people might think it was a nervous breakdown, some people might think it was an epiphany, but it literally changed to the core everything I thought I knew. And it actually gave me what I needed to pass the Master of Wine examination in 1990. And I didn't stop thinking that way. And for many years, it actually was not fun. It was very confronting. And I just want to preface what I'm going to present to you today. A lot of people will be confronted by, a lot of people, frankly, will be pissed off. And that's fine, I don't care. But hopefully some of you might like it, okay? All right, so that's that one. So has anybody heard about the agnostic, dyslexic, insomniac who stayed awake at night wondering if there really is a dog? That's me. All right. So since that time, for 30 years, systematically, I've been looking at what I thought I knew, but even more important, addressing the dissonance, the disagreement. Does anybody notice that maybe yesterday there were some people that disagreed about what wine should be? And they were both expert? All right, has that ever happened to you? Yeah. All right, so for 30 years, I've not only been looking at the whole wine and food subject, but it also led to explorations about how human beings operate, how we're different, why we disagree, how we create our preferences and values. All right. And then I've got a pragmatic side. I develop wine business courses and classes, work with universities, and have a business, and we create winery financial calculators and workbooks for people who hate finance. So that's enough of that. All right. So I want to bitch slap the wine industry. If you're not familiar with that term, Google it. There is no such thing. There is not of some perfect pairing. It just does not exist. Okay? That's number one. There's no such thing as a perfect wine. People will argue at the highest level. I've had a dinner where two masters of wine are having a wider range of wine. This actually happened just the other night, didn't it, Bob Campbell? Are you here? You've seen this shit before, so. Oh, there he is, okay. And at this one dinner in Napa for the MW study course, people are, oh, did you try wine number 3? Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah, it's awful. Oh no, oh, number 3? It's fantastic. Are you kidding? It's not even commercially acceptable. This is swill. No, this is a great, seriously. Does everybody notice that phenomenon to some level? Yep. That happens, okay. So the question then becomes, what wine goes with unicorn? So if you're searching for that, let me know how that goes. Another thing is a cautionary word. I've heard a lot of banter about, oh, these are commercial wines or beginner wines, or, you know, for people who are, people take wine descriptions and categories personally. Don't do that. Stop it. They're not commercial wines. They're wines that are made in a larger quantity that are enjoyed by millions of people, you frickin' morons. What the hell do you think? And people go around. I have had dozens of conversations with people who are photographers, people who are serving these wines, with Quentin, who's over there serving the coffee, and with many of you who think they don't like wine because they're being told the wines they drink are immature, unsophisticated, and for uneducated people. We have no clue the damage that we're doing the way that we're marketing and talking about wine and categorizing wine. So just cut it out, yeah? All right, I get a little fired up. Where am I? This is for me, not for you guys. All right, there are people that are arrogant about wine, and there are people who actually are very proud about being arrogant about wine. That should be no basis for how anybody markets their wine or whatever, unless you are arrogant and want only arrogant people to drink your wine. Okay? So, and who uses a computer here? Or a smartphone? My son's an electrical engineer now. Just graduated UC Davis. Yeah, I know it, no shit. Get out of the house. And he's got a job and a girlfriend. And he's intellectually dysfunctional. The Big Bang, anybody watch The Big Bang? Yeah. He's Sheldon. I mean, he really is. We were talking one time and I said, you know, oh, this video and the graphics are incredible and they're so real. He says, videos aren't real. They're an illusion. And I said, God damn it, you're 3 years old. Seriously, that's a serious, it was. He is the last person in the world you want to ask about how to use your phone or your computer. And he can look at a computer and just look at some numbers and some plugs and stuff like that. He knows everything inside. He knows how the chips were made. He knows how it's programmed. He knows all that stuff. But he can't communicate about how to use it. And he is an arrogant shit when it comes to this. Oh, Dan, you're so stupid. Jesus Christ. You know, everybody knows this. No, sorry. All right, so anyways, and he's great. He's a great kid. So there's a time and place for arrogance. There's people who want it. But if you're thinking that's a good way to go about wine and wine marketing, you're dead wrong, unless that's the market that you want to market to. So good on that. All right. And that brings me to one of my favorite quotes. My actual favorite is, the lowest form of learning is knowing. Okay? And if anybody figures out who said that, I can't even remember, but I live by it. This is by Martin Luther King, and I'm going to sort of refer to it a number of times. Nothing in the world more dangerous than sincere ignorance. All right? So people who love what they do, who love wine and food, but are ignoring certain things that are known in science, or certain elements of history and tradition, or certain dysfunctions or dissonance that we all have about what's good or what's bad, and so on. And then there's conscientious stupidity. That's another topic, but we'll talk about it. All right. So at some point, bullshit started to override reality with wine and food. I studied that kind of crap. And it started to really take shape in the early 1960s. Larousse Gastronomique, written by Prosper Montaigne in 1938, is my Bible. It occupies the most hallowed position in our household. It's right next to the toilet. And I still today constantly just peruse and go through things. But if you go back and you look at the 1961 Crown edition that you can buy on Amazon very inexpensively, you're going to find that there's these charts in here. The charts were actually added in 1961. They were not part of the original Larousse Gastronomique, because there was no wine and food pairing. There was no wine and food matching in France. We made that up. And people used to start to create guidelines of what to pair with what. This is dangerous, I got a laser. Right? And if you look under fish and seafood and hors d'oeuvres, you're going to find Chateau Yquem. It was never a dessert wine, we'll get to that. When you get to the dessert, or to the sweet courses, you're going to find Montrachet, and you're going to find white Rhone wines that were sweet. They weren't dry. We talk about, oh, Americans love sweet wines because they grew up on Coca-Cola. Well, if you actually go back 100 and certainly into the late 19th century, it was very typical for the Champagne, the Veuve, Moet. The wine they were actually drinking was very frequently 140 grams per liter of sugar. And the export market, the biggest export market was Russia. The wines were 300 grams per liter. We're not talking a little sweet. Coca-Cola is 108 grams per liter in the American version. What happened to us? What happened to understanding truly what people were drinking? I don't know if anybody noticed, but Matt Kramer yesterday was talking about Sancerre. And he pointed out that originally Sancerre was sweet. It wasn't dry. So what's this classical pairing when the wine today is nothing like it was traditionally or historically? What country drinks the most fortified port wine in the world? Anybody? France? And it was served at the beginning of the meal, not at the end. And it is today, it's an aperitif. It's enjoyed with the meal if that's what you want. Oh, Sauterne and foie gras and so on. No classic, no mention. If you actually look through this a little further, they would recommend Chinon or Nuit Saint-Georges, but there's no mention of anything sweet except Grand Montrachet. Grand Montrachet was code for sweet as hell. It was botrytis. So, and I was noticing, you guys have a little botrytis trouble every now and then. There's actually a way to leverage that and make wine for a new market segment that you're all oblivious to, and it's huge. It's 40% of Caucasians and 70% of the China market. All right. So this is in the body of Larousse Gastronomique. When you serve the Lafite, the Hermitage, the Côte Rôtie with the entremet, the finest dishes in the service, that's when you pull out the Romanée, the Lafite, the Hermitage. And this is what I want you to get. If the guests prefer, this is the tradition of hospitality. This is the tradition of the European table, of French cuisine. It's the essence of hospitality. The Bordeaux, the Sauterne are also offered to the guest if they prefer. We've lost any sense of hospitality. As a matter of fact, we know more about the genetics of grapevines, and we talk more about the genetics of grapevines than anybody cares to even think about in terms of consumers. We don't know anything about consumers. Okay. So here's where I'm coming from. I'll move over here so I can figure out. So wine and food pairing or matching was never a tradition until recently. The emergence of wine and food pairing coincides with a very complex set of social things, including rampant alcoholism and now binge drinking in France. It's not the beverage of moderation, it never was. All right, so get over that crap. And biological sensory individualism, who you each are, how you experiencing things alone provides a basis for getting rid of wine and food pairing. Okay? Where's Marcus? Marcus, tell me what you like and don't like. I want to hear what you don't like.
I can't stand grapefruit.
And what's it like for you?
Extremely bitter.
Well, but grapefruit, doesn't Sauvignon Blanc sometimes smell like grapefruit? It goes together. You must be an idiot. Didn't your palate mature? No, he's got specific genetics. I asked permission to sort of do this. I kind of took it a little too far. But he's got a genetic response to stimulus that creates a horrible, bitter, acrid, so on. Where's my mushroom person? How's the mushrooms?
I don't know because I'm not going near them.
She can't go near them because she actually gets a gag reflex and so forth. So you can throw those mushrooms over in the corner. All right? Anybody have we call it cilantro, you guys call it coriander, right? Anybody have the genes, OR62A, that makes cilantro just soapy, disgusting, and horrible? And how many people try to convince you, oh, I didn't used to like it, you'll learn to like it. It'll never happen. Oh, but their palate hasn't developed, I learned to like it. Julia Child, the famous chef and renowned educator for food, had that gene. And so I guess she never grew up, her palate never matured. All right. So my proposal, my position is we need to educate the wine trade and hospitality professionals, and that goes for sommeliers, to quit what we're doing and to think about a new pathway. a new wine 101. How many people here are wine educators? For anybody interested after this, we're trying to work with educators around the world to have learning about your own personal experiences, sensitivities, likes and dislikes be an essential part of the very first thing you learn about wine. And additionally, that you learn how and why other people are different. So when we get to wine education, that we've got a better understanding of the market that we're serving, okay? A lot of people go, oh, but then you don't need sommeliers, you don't know. Stop it. There's a way to go about this that will literally create millions and millions of consumers who are no longer embarrassed by their taste. They're no longer embarrassed to proclaim that they like Riesling or Moscato or sweet wine or dry wine or Parker. We attack everybody in this industry. No one's safe. 100-point system. Oh, that shit. Oh. So everyone's at this. So I mentioned a little bit before, how many people know that this is consumption of wine in France? We start with my birth year, about 1952, and it's plummeted 80%. Oh, but we should be like the French. You're in trouble. All right. So we already did everybody like Sauvignon Blanc here. Does everybody agree which one they like? I don't think so. All right, so for yourselves of these 5 wines, and I do want to acknowledge the wineries who provided these wines also, and I hope you love them. So we have the St. Clair Vickers Choice. Who hates Vickers? But who loves that wine? Who loved that wine? Anybody love that wine? Okay. Do you know that there's a market of people who will love that wine? There is. The challenge is, how do we segment those people and create targeted marketing so that we can get this kind of wine to them without over-contextualizing it because it's got bubbles or it's got a certain character and so forth, all right? Then we've got a lighter Sauvignon Blanc. I'm going to get into this really in depth. Lighter than what? And what does the word lighter mean? And when it comes to wine and food matching, you'll use that word, oh, it goes with lighter foods. It's more delicate, it's this and that. There is a very, very large segment all around the world of people who are very sensitive to alcohol burn. So this actually could be presented as a more delicate style of wine with lower alcohol that is fantastic with all foods for people who love that style of wine, who don't like the burn, who basically would gravitate to this. Not categorizing it. The market's there. We need to communicate. We need to learn how to distinguish the people and then create the right context so they can drink it with what they like. All right? And we'll get to wine number 3, and then we've got a residual sugar of 1 gram per liter. Oh. Sickly. No. Delicious. And actually representative of how Sancerre traditionally tasted, by the way. Who hates this trend towards sweet red wines? Come on, you know. I know who you are. All right. So I've got a bottle of 1947 Chateau Cheval Blanc in my room, and I'm having a little party tonight. Who wants in? All right. If you don't like sweet red wines, you're not invited. Anybody know the residual sugar of 1947 Chateau Cheval Blanc, one of the most celebrated red wines in history? 30 grams per liter. Montrachet used to take advantage of botrytis to make the best Montrachet in special years. But you don't know that anymore. We don't know what Montrachet used to be, and it used to be very frequently botrytis, which would help to concentrate the flavors, add the botrytin, and increase the alcohol levels. But that's all bad stuff now, all right? I love this. Who loves this wine? Anybody besides me? I know a lot of people that will absolutely dig the hell out of this wine. All right. All right, so let's then try the food. Oh, I'm sorry, and I was tasting this. It's 1 gram per liter. Is that right? Yes. All right. Different aromatic profile, different style, different market. That's all. Not better, not worse. These are all delicious wines. And then, Jules Taylor. Anybody love that besides me? Okay. Who would have that with their steak tonight? Yeah. Or with oysters. The word dessert wine was invented by the U.S. Treasury after Prohibition to levy taxation on alcohol levels, not sweetness of wine. It was to close a tax loophole for higher alcohol wines so that any wine sold in the United States, and sometimes up until the 1980s and 90s in certain states, if it was 14% alcohol or greater, it was taxed as a dessert wine. That category did not exist in France, and if you have it on your label, you ought to take it the hell off your label, because it's telling people this is the wine to save to the very end, to the most guilt-ridden part of the meal, and you're going to have to suffer through all this dry shit if you're certain genetic predispositions. Yeah, that's fine. And it was invented by the U.S. feds to close a tax loophole. All right? They can be great as or with dessert, but they used to be enjoyed. You go back through the classic text, go back through the history, and if you find Chateau Yquem being positioned with dessert prior to 1960, let me know, because I can't find it. Right? So who wants to sell more New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc? You're on a pathway, doing what we're doing, you're on a pathway to celebrating the diversity, qualifying them as beginner wines or expert wines, having no clue who the market the wines are intended for, and you'll follow Riesling, which I started in wine in 1966, and back then Riesling was the next big thing. And it's our inability to find which Riesling for which consumer that has prevented it from really becoming the next big thing. Because somebody likes a fresh, fruity, delicate, low alcohol Riesling, they go out to a nice restaurant or into a wine shop, a knowledgeable, a sincere, conscientious, knowledgeable person sells them a better Riesling that's completely dry, that smells like petrol, and they give up and they go back to cocktails, they go back to their beer. Where's the photographer that was here? What's your favorite wine, sir?
Gewürz.
Gewürz, got it. He actually told me he was not a wine drinker when we first met, but he loves Gewürztraminer. We need to redo and reevaluate what the hell we're doing here, and literally, if you hate me, don't email me. If you like this and want to learn more, let me know. But we really need to start a campaign. We need to start a campaign to stop wine and food pairing, because we're making it all up. We think that it's something important. Nobody can agree on what to do or why or whatever. And then we've created all sorts of BS to support why we do it. All right, so we're going to talk about perception, and That's the ability to taste, smell, see, hear. Everybody agree with that? It's becoming aware of something. So is everybody aware there's little cups? Deborah, don't smell that. Put that down. Yeah, you could. We'll get to that in just a second. But are you aware there's little cups with powders in them? Right? Who's excited about the white powder and is rolling up a dollar bill? So perception is a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something. It's a mental impression, and we're going to get to that. That's an important thing to know. So, you've been told most of taste is really smell, right? So most of this table is a tablecloth and glasses. No, the table's supporting it all. The table's a foundation, but they're not. They're separate. They're interdependent, but they're independent. Does that make sense? All right. If you cannot perceive something without smelling it, it is not a taste. Most of taste is not really smell. They're interdependent. They have interactions. There's a neurology behind it, and it enhances our ability to regard, understand, or interpret something. But they're separate. So, on your left, we've got little cup number 1. I want you to hold your nose. Everybody hold your nose. And wet your finger. And then put it in a little of the powder. And put that powder in your tongue and keep your nose closed. Don't let go. What do you taste? Nothing. Because it's tasteless. Let go. That smell. They are separate. If you cannot perceive something with your nose closed, it has no taste. Now, this then leads to the sensory cycle of perception and how we store and understand and so forth. Now, in the United States, we have Christmas. I think you've got Christmas here too, right? Does anybody associate this smell with certain parts of holidays or your culture? When I do this in Istanbul, what's the number one, when I say, okay, what do you associate that smell to? What's the number one response? Lamb. Their culture is different. When I do this in China, what do they associate it with? They don't associate it with shit because they don't use it. And trying to find this stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, is like in pot cinnamon. Oh. And they don't want to say, no, yes, we need cinnamon. Oh, yes. We don't get it. Or raspberries or whatever. Thinking that what we do with wine and wine and food pairing is going to work in China is going to create one of the greatest disasters for the wine industry in history, as all their wine starts to come online, as they start to get better at what they do, and we're not cultivating a culture of consumption. It's all of prestige and so forth. We'll get to that. All right. All right. We got another, hold your nose. Can you see there's a little difference in the color of this one? And put that on your tongue. Let it go. And what is it? Cumin, coriander. And isn't it interesting, just by language alone, when you ask people in the UK or UK sort of base culture, what is the smell? And you say, oh, it's cilantro, or it's coriander, or it's cumin. Which is it? Right? What do you associate that smell with? Mexican food, certain curry, all sorts of things, right? Tacos, yes ma'am. Tongue, who loves tongue here? This honest God, I love. When you come to my house in Bend, everybody's, I swear to God, this is true. You're invited to my home in Bend. I've got a bedroom for you, and we'll do this all frickin' day long. We don't have time to do it here. And it will blow your mind. But I do a braised tongue and a cognac cream demi-glace with green peppercorns. It's awesome. And somebody says, how can you even stand to have tongue in your mouth? There you go. That's what we do. All right. Hang on, don't give up on me. All right, hold your nose. And in. Anybody getting any taste? Some people might start to get a little bit. Let your nose go. And start shouting out, what do you taste? What's that? 5 spice powder. It's complex. A lot of you won't know what it is. A lot of you, it's going to be the clove that dominates. A lot of you, it's going to be the sort of licorice, the star anise part of it. A lot of you, it will be the Szechuan peppercorn component of 5 spice powder. It's so much harder to communicate because it's complex, and that's a problem. An aroma is a single identifiable smell. A bouquet is a collection of aromas. Flowers come in individual flowers that you can say, oh, that's a rose or a petunia or this or that. A bouquet is a collection of flowers. It actually goes etymologically back to a thicket or a brush. But what we've obfuscated it, oh yes, an aroma is the primary smells of the grape, and bouquet is the secondary and tertiary smells of fermentation, and nobody understands that shit. Stop it. All right. Oh, we got one more. All right, hold your nose and taste the next little. Ooh, a lot of stuff going on there, isn't there? That's taste, you guys. Let go. And a lot of stuff going on here. He hates it. Who loves salt? Who loves so much salt that sometimes you don't even taste the food you already know? Did you know that's the #1 sign that people have the most taste buds? And if you don't get it. But salt suppresses bitterness. We'll get to that. And there's a reason for that. Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and... All right. When I was talking about umami, who was around when I was talking about umami 30 years ago? And people were giving me shit. And Harvey Steinman came and spent a day with Jeremiah Tower, a really famous chef. And they're like so confronted, but in 1996 was the first article written. Max Lake is the first to mention umami in wine in his book in 1966 when I started drinking wine, but it was more in a philosophical. It is known today that there are hundreds of tastes, not just 5. They tend to fall in the 5 buckets, but there's so much evidence that potassium chloride is a completely separate taste from sodium chloride. So different forms of salt. And the potassium chloride doesn't suppress bitterness, which is actually what the people who love salt are looking to achieve. And even worse, if you've got that high level of sensitivity and you want the bitterness suppressed, you're more likely to find the potassium chloride has a bitterness to it. So it makes it really challenging. All right. All right, are we done with this crap? Yay. All right. Cool. Any questions yet? All right. Onward you go. All right. So who's right? Look across the table. Can the person across from you actually understand your point of view? You're the person next to me. Who has multiple personality disorders and you can't even tell who the hell you are? Get up in the morning and go, you scared me. Didn't expect to see you here. But this is arguments about wine. This is arguments about wine and food. This is disagreement. We all are biologically individual organisms. And we kind of know it, but we don't really understand it. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish a bit of today. To make things even worse, color doesn't exist. You know, there is no color actually inherently. It only exists by light refraction, by reception by sensors in your eyeballs, and it's sent to your brain processes it. Then we learn to give color names and have it mean something. Who does work in China? What do they think of the color red? It's really important. And you know, what do bulls think in Spain? What do bulls think of the color red? Makes them pissed off. What colors do you see there? Let's at least just find something objective here, right? You see different colors. So who sees kind of a blue? Everybody sees blue lines. And who sees sort of greenish yellow? Who sees the orange and the purple? There is no green color up there. It's not there. Your brain's making it up, and actually there is no green color in this except for an illusion created in your mind. I'm serious. And this is how it works. This is a close-up of the exact same thing. And when you have the light blue with the purple, it looks like blue. But put that orangish gold on either side, it appears as green. The reason this is important is because different people interpret things differently. Anybody colorblind here? Okay? You just lack those receptors for it. Doesn't mean you, because you're obviously smart and handsome and virile, but you just can't see those colors. That's all. And it doesn't mean he can't enjoy art. And it doesn't mean he can't be excellent at art history or appreciate photography or anything else. It just means he doesn't have those receptors, that's all. And this is so pervasive in in all of our sensations, that people have extra capacities for perception while other people just don't have the receptors for that, in taste, in smell, in hearing, etc. All right? The things that determine what you perceive are genetics and physiology. This is the basis of what you are going to be capable of perceiving, and the range of things and the intensity of those things. So we've got somebody who walked into this room, who said, oh, mushrooms, and it was picking that out. Are they? All right. Some people are incredibly hypersensitive to TCA smell. Everybody notice that? I'm not. You don't want me to tell you if the wine's corked, because it's going to take me a few minutes. You want Walt Klenz, who used to be the CEO of Behringer and chairman of Foster's and then Treasury. He could walk into our event center, he'd walk in the door and go, hup, corked wine. And it could be totally in another room and had just been opened. It's not even been poured into a glass, and he was that sensitive. I can do that with burnt coffee left on a burner until it boils down in a hotel. One time I was having a meeting with a food and beverage manager. I said, somebody left a pot of coffee on the burner. They went back in the kitchen and whatever, no, it's fine. It was 4 floors away, seriously, in one of the service stations for room service. We're just different, that's all. Then there's neurology. Neurology was responsible for you seeing the greenish yellow color. And the idea that most of taste is really smell is supported by sensory interactions. And then we're also going to look at something called sensory adaptation, which is the basis of what happens with wine and food. Then there's psychology. So anybody later who needs, you can come up to my couch and we can talk. All right? Yeah. With pleasure.
Or shovel, sorry.
That's right. So remember earlier, when we were talking about perception, at the end it talked about that's how we form memories, that's how we recall things. All right? So psychology is the ability to start processing, okay, I've got this, and it's psychology, it's cultural psychology that says, oh, I associate cinnamon with lamb, or with apple pie, or with this or that. And it's also psychology that has some people respond to mushrooms because they were force-fed it or they were pressured to have it as a child, they hated it, And the conscious taste of it, the perceived taste of it is a gag reflex, but she also knows that it might be in certain foods that she doesn't recognize, and she's eating it not knowingly. It could be that somebody likes Sauvignon Blanc because they had wonderful summers and the sound of mowing lawns and the pyrazines released into the air is really pleasurable. For others, it's different. Preferences, attitudes, in behaviors that are a response to stimulus is the psychology of understanding the markets and segmenting the market appropriately so you can sell more frickin' wine. And if you don't do it, there's going to be so many styles of Sauvignon Blanc, there's going to be so much chatter, so many opinions about it, that it, like Syrah, it, like Merlot, it, like so many other wines, it, like Riesling, will start just to become noise. And because we can't communicate with consumers on their terms, they will begin to drink something else because they don't know what the hell's going to come to the table. Seriously, all right? So that's what we're doing. Now, once you've had something, once you've processed it, once you store that information, you can recognize it. That's what the word means. It's reprocessing it, so, oh, I can recognize you. I met you on the plane. We had fun. We went to the pool when we got in. She couldn't get in the pool because her motel didn't, so we cheated and we got her in. And all these memories come because I recognize her, and that's how our brains work. That's how it works. It's what blind tasting is. What we do with wine and food is we formulate things in our little animal brains, and we think we can predict the future of what's going to happen with wine and food and why people should like it. And it's not valid. We live in different sensory worlds. We just do. All right? Does everybody, I really want you to take this to heart. This is Dr. Linda Bartoshuk, who was a geneticist doing sensory work about genetic predictors of response to stimulus of a very specific group of compounds called teourea, the prop tasting. She identified non-tasters and tasters, and she agrees, very unfortunately, coined the term super taster. Stop using that. God damn it. Unless you really understand that the people most likely to be super tasters out in the market, out in the real world, are drinking Moscato and sweet wines and so forth. Most people have no clue where that term comes from. People now, oh, I'm a super taster, like there's some sort of superiority. Stop that shit. All right, let's talk about wine and food interactions. We're just going to cover this topically. All right, pick a wine of your choice, whichever one you want. Wine's made from grapes. Then they go together. You know, there's this natural compatibility. I'm going to match my wine and food here. What happens when you have a grape and have a wine? So, actually, let's all do the same thing. Let's do the blind river. We'll just go right to the middle, all right? And then there's another grape. You can try it with something else. So, when you taste the wine, there's another thing. Wine people don't drink wine like normal human beings. We don't. God invented the forehead so my nose won't fall in. Right? And look at the faces on people when you're doing wine tasting. Oh, yeah. All right? What the hell are we? I do too, and there's sometimes it's necessary and it gives me more. So all I want you to do is take a little sip of the wine. Pay attention especially to bitterness, acidity, and so forth. Eat your grape. Voila. Try the wine again. I'm just simply going to ask, who found the wine got better? No, this is, no, thank you for doing this. Seriously. We ourselves are so embarrassed to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. We are nuts. We all need this couch. Who found the wine got more bitter, more sour? Yeah. All right, that's all. And it's about 90. There are people who will find wine, and this will happen with Shiraz, this will happen with Pinot Noir, this will happen with French wine, this will happen with wine. If the food is sweeter than the wine, typically it will suck. Or scientifically, it increases the level of succosity of the combination. We already know this. We know the fundamentals. Who this morning brushed your teeth and said, oh, before I lose the moment, I got to get the orange juice. This is called sensory adaptation. This is one stimulus causing a change in how you perceive other stimuli. This is a real problem in tasting wine and wine panels when people are going back and forth one wine to another. If one wine's a little sweeter, the next wine's going to taste less fruity, less rich, more sour, more bitter, and it's way more extreme with red wine than it is with white because you've already got elevated levels of bitterness and sweetness. That's all. And some people will try that combination and go, oh, that's awesome. It really just, another will go, what the hell's wrong with you? Because you don't like it. But that's basic. Sweetness in food makes wine stronger. By that we mean more acidic. It'll enhance the sort of the alcohol burn, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Everybody with me on that? Umami taste does fundamentally the same thing. Umami is the taste of glutamate, is the primary source of umami taste. There's all sorts of psychological baggage with it that I can't go into from the 1960s, papers written, the Chinese restaurant syndrome. If you're allergic to it, you're not alive. You can't live, your brain cannot function without glutamate. And human breast milk has 10 times more umami than cow's milk, maybe where the term umami, where that came from. And for any of you sick bastards who in your adult life tried human breast milk, we know who we are. But, it's an experiment. And humans love umami taste. It leads us to safe forms of complex proteins. It has us actually put certain foods together so that it's a protein that'll actually sustain us when certain foods don't individually. And the second group of compounds is called nucleotides. Anybody ever have stainless Chardonnay and then stainless Chardonnay, the exact same base wine with leaves stirred? That's umami taste. Nucleotides are decomposed ribonucleic acid, and one of the primary things released during yeast autolysis is nucleotides, and it gives you that rich mouth feel and so forth. Let me help you distinguish it. Unless you hate mushrooms, you'll have to find something else. Little bite of raw mushroom, then taste the cooked mushroom. Do you find something more attractive about the cooked mushroom? Do you find something there that wasn't originally? We converted glutamic acid to glutamate, all right? And it's more delicious to us. Humans search. The need for satisfying umami taste is so powerful that during times of extreme poverty in the mid-19th century in Italy, in spite of all the evidence that was actually supported by certain misunderstandings, the Italians started to eat tomatoes. It wasn't part of their culture. They were considered poisonous. It was reinforced that they were poisonous because if you eat acidic tomatoes off a pewter, you get lead poisoning. But they had a breakthrough. They started to go to porcelain. Problem solved. In Australia, after World War I, meat was scarce, it was rationed, ranch hands, there was such a loss of young life and so forth. And people started to take the leftover yeast from brewing beer. All right, everybody knows what yeast looks like, you know, and they would salt it and preserve it as Vegemite. Umama Rama. It is. You love the shit, whether you know it or not. And umami in the food has typically the same reaction as the other naturally attractive, delicious taste we can discern, which is sweetness. Right? It makes wine more bitter, more unpleasant. Paul Mabry taught me this. Didn't you, Paul? He did. All right, who likes ripe tomatoes? So while tomatoes are growing, glutamic acid is necessary for cell division. As ripening occurs, it's naturally converted more and more into glutamate. And at the point of cellular decomposition, enzymes are released that start to break down the ribonucleic acid into nucleotides, and you get a ripe taste. Who hates tomatoes? Yeah, good on you. Don't do this. Let's go ahead and do another wine. Let's do the Gießen. Smell it like a normal human being. Oh, that's lovely. Take a little sip. This is the smile I want to see at wine tastings when I do it, not this. All right? And in China, and in France, and the US. Right. Eat some of your tomato. You can cut it in small bits if you like, or you can use your fingers. It's up to you and your cultural background and upbringing. I had no culture or upbringing. So, and then try your wine again. Now I want you all to pay attention to the responses. What happens is going to be the main question, but who liked the wine better? All right, and look around, keep your hands up. And who didn't like the wine as much? 50 friggin' 50, you guys. This is why wine and food matching is complete crap. And all you've got to do is look at the expert opinion of what wine goes with this marinara sauce or with this fresh tomato with basil and so on and so forth, and you'll find out what that individual's opinion is about wine and tomatoes. But it doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong. And if they're reading that it's a bad experience and somebody is saying, oh, I tried Sauvignon Blanc with tomatoes, it was horrible, no one should do it, you're not going to sell as much Sauvignon Blanc. I'm sorry. We have no clue the damage that we're doing. All we can do is encourage the beer business to do more beer in food matching, because it really supports selling more beer. All right? Everybody got a little lemon, and then your little last little cup here has some white powder. I want you to sprinkle a little bit on your lemon. You've done this before, maybe. With permission of your neighbor, you can do it on each other's body parts. The tequila industry knows more about how to sell and promote their product with an experience that people can actually get and understand than all this crap we've created about wine and food. All right, let's do a lighter wine. Let's do the Stoneleigh, right? Smell wine like a human. Oh, lovely. Or, oh, God. Little sip. Take a look at your lemon. There's a real light lick, don't bite it. A little lick of your lemon, and taste wine again. As we're going to do this with every wine, then the same thing's going to happen. Who found the wine to be smoother, less acidic, and so on and so forth? Now look, all right? Put a little bit on another piece of tomato, and I want you to notice two things. And if you need more salt, put a little more salt. Taste the wine that we tried in the first place. That was the Gießen, I believe. Try the wine. Now try the tomato. And tell me if you agree or disagree the tomato tastes better. Oh. Delicious, yummy. Some people don't like it as much. It's all up to you. It's all up to the consumer. Now try the wine again. And there will be typically much more agreement that the wine is fine. Anyone been to Tuscany? Anybody not been but want to go with me? You're paying? Where'd you go? Bistecca alla Fiorentina, a big steak, heavily salted, served with lemon. That's all. In Burgundy, they use verjus, they use wine reductions for the acid. Look for classic preparations, a sauce à la bordelaise or ceps à la bordelaise. They're boletus mushrooms. Umama rama, finish it with lemon juice and salt. It's what they do. The cuisine of Alsace is based on choucroute, lots of acidity, lots of salt. We have the truita bleu. It's very fresh trout that actually has that slimy mucus on it, and when you plunge it into the vinegar salted water, it turns blue and renders it delicious with the wine. And they didn't drink Gewürztraminer, they didn't drink Riesling, they were drinking Sylvaner, they were drinking Edelzweiger, and the wines that were famous and expensive were being exported. They didn't drink those wines, there's no affinity, we're just making this crap up. I better speed up here a little bit. Got a lot to cover. Right. So, sourness and saltiness in the food make wine milder. Sweetness and umami make it stronger. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Here's why you like what you like. You like what you like because the foundation is what you can perceive and what intensity, and it's genetic, it's physiological. If you ain't got a receptor for something, it doesn't exist. If you've got certain genetic variables, something that doesn't exist for one person could be this incredibly intense and even painful experience for another. Then we have life experience. We've got our culture, our peers, and our environment, and our learning and our observation. And people attack my work. Well, you don't take into account this stuff. Well, sorry, you don't know my work. Because we do, and we look at this. This is the neurology. This is mostly the psychology. So when our tastes change over time, it's not our palate maturing. It's actually psychological. It's us going psycho. It's neuroplasticity. It's reassociation of sensations to good or to bad, or an aspiration or evaluation. It goes something like this. Oh, this is a nice wine. What is it? 45 Mouton, Tim. Ooh. Oh, that's great. Jesus. I just went psycho. Wow. Who ordered this? Well, we did, but we put it on your bill. And that's how quick it changes. That's how quick somebody's saying, oh, isn't this a delicious combination? Well, I want to be like that person, or I want to learn that. So right in that moment, it changes. That's how quick it is. What contributes to personal preference of Sauvignon Blanc? The craziest shit. I mean, seriously, we were just finding, so people's experiences, especially with pyrazines, can have a profound effect on how they respond to the stimulus of the aromatic. And if the kid's mowing the lawn while all the other kids are playing, it could be really negative. It's already conditioning that person to not like Sauvignon Blanc. If he equates mowing the lawn with his first car and saving money and whatever, it's positive as hell. Anybody have grass allergies? A lot of people who have grass allergies have to learn to like or have to change their neuroplasticity because, and ask this question, when you find somebody that finds Sauvignon Blanc horrible smelling? And a lot of people do, just frankly, but same with Cabernet and everything else. Ask them if they have grass allergies. You'll be surprised at how many people are subliminally making that connection. On the bottom left, it's very funny, the summer after senior high school in the US correlates, and this is just observational right now, we study these things, we haven't studied this, but it's amazing how, when you say, how was the summer after high school, and you can see people, oh, it was awesome, fell in love, made out on the grass. Or it could be like me, that the love of your life that summer, you thought this was the love of your life, you thought you were forever as a couple, and then the bitch leaves you. We're just this complex mixture. We're this cocktail of psychology and neurology and sensations and whatever. We experience things and then we want to share it with everybody. So if I were to ask somebody to describe those tables, would there be general agreement? You'd leave the room, okay, oh, I saw the tables. One was long and narrow and the other one was wider and shorter. I could maybe convince you that they're the same surface area, but certainly they can't plausibly be the same absolute dimensions, and they are. Your brain will not accept that. And you can come up and measure the shit afterwards if you like. This is just a little PowerPoint thing with lines that aren't changing. But your brain is being tricked by context and by things of an illusion. And this happens every day. It happens with all of us. It's how we learn and associate. But unless I had done this, and for many of you, you still won't believe that these are the same length and width. As a matter of fact, the table on the right is actually a little bit more narrow than the one on the left, and that just does not seem possible. Our brains function differently at the same moment. This is the famous spinning lady. You can look her up online. There are multiple studies. Now, when you're looking at her, who kind of sees her going in this direction? Raise your hand. All right, look around. Who sees her going the opposite direction? What's wrong with you morons? Who sees her changing directions? Who doesn't see her changing directions? Aren't we looking at the same damn thing? Our brain is processing her however you are neurologically wired, and if the right hemisphere of your brain is processing it at the moment, she appears to be spinning, because there's no spinning. It's not a lady. This is blobs on a screen, giving an illusion of spinning, but it's actually going back and forth. And if the right hemisphere of the brain's doing it, she's going clockwise. And if the left hemisphere of your brain is going anti-clockwise, and who sees her kind of changing directions? That's a sign of severe mental problems. But you already know that. Not once, and I've literally probably done this for tens of thousands of people. Not once has anyone who sees the change, no one's ever gone, oh look, I changed. We attribute it to the source, not to ourselves. And we do that with wine descriptions, we do that with wine preferences, we do it with wine and food, and we just need to stop it. There's consumers out there. They like delicate wines, they like intense wines, they love the smell of Sauvignon Blanc, they hate the smell of Sauvignon Blanc. There are Sauvignon Blancs, people who hate the classic Sauvignon Blanc pyrazine. There are Sauvignon Blancs that you can introduce to them that they'll love. Some people want sweet wines, but horrid. Wouldn't want 47 Cheval Blanc, Montrachet, or Champagne. Shit, it's crazy. Sensory genetics and physiology are a key part of this. Anybody, did I ask the cilantro coriander gene? Yeah. And if you've got it, you have no clue. It's OR6A2. And you can actually find this if you know how to do the results on 23andMe. Their distribution, the highest level of population that had this genetic variant is Azerbaijan, or however the hell you pronounce that. 17% of the people. I know people that have lived in cultures in Latino or China where cilantro is a main element of their cuisine, and life is hell for them. Julia Child was asked on Larry King Live years and years ago, is there anything you can't eat? And she says, I hate cilantro, it's disgusting. Well, what do you do when you have food? I send it back, or if I can, I'll pick it out and throw it on the floor. Okay, she wasn't very mature. Her sense of taste wasn't evolved, all right? We need to revise history. It needs to be done in the WSET. It needs to be done in all your wine programs, because we don't even know what the wines used to be like. And the evidence is there. It's really easy to find. And we need to get over this notion that, oh, the wine and the food grew up together, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. Your palate doesn't mature. The changes in preferences over time are actually part of neurogastronomic programming, that this reminds me of my trip to Italy, or to this wine and food experience and whatever. If you went to Italy and you had a great time, it's a positive association. If you were caught at customs with some substances that you don't know how you got in your bag and you ended up having to get out of jail, then it might not be so good. Okay? Metaphors is what we're using to match wine and food, not reality. Oh, it's a heavy wine, I need a heavy wine with that. So we go in our heads, do our descriptive crap, take that description, describe what food it goes with, without any clue that the cherries could potentially really make the red wine suck with the duck. And that a heavy, big wine can't plausibly go with the delicate fish. I'm sorry, does anybody know that if you pour a low alcohol sweet wine, Riesling, a Moscato, a White Zinfandel into a glass, and gently pour Cabernet or Shiraz on top, the heavy wine will sink? And it's not the red wine, it's a metaphor that's in our head, but it's not any part of reality. So this is wine and food matching today. Metaphors, pseudoscience, misunderstandings, hyperbole, and ignorance. We become esoteric, which means all those things that arcane and, rarefied, all this kind of abstruse. Jesus, I'm abstruse and I don't even know it, right? So here's my request. Celebrate equally the diversity of consumers out in the world. Work hard to promote wine without all this baggage and negative associations and making people feel stupid. Demonstrate little things like this to people as how to enjoy your wine and food, so that you can have Sauvignon Blanc with steak. Anybody eat steak with Sauvignon Blanc and love it? I mean, why not? Why would you want to take that off the table if you're marketing Sauvignon Blanc? How crazy could we be? And most people find it absolutely delicious. You might not, that's fine. You might not want to do any of this is fine. But if you want to sell more New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, learn to taste the wine and think, who would like this? What market segment? How do I communicate with them? How do I create the context for their enjoyment? Stop pairing wine and food and pay kind of attention to what goes on. And if you like this, let me know. Join the revolution. I'm getting really old, and so I'm getting more confrontation. I'm going to be dead. I don't give a shit what you think. But seriously, this is so much more fun than what we're doing today. You'll see it, and we've been doing this all around with the staff and the people that are working this event. And going, oh, this is so cool. I feel so good about myself now. Thank you for telling me I've got more taste buds and giving me a pathway so I can enjoy wine. So, and thank you all very, very much. I greatly appreciate it.